Now is Democratic strategist and former Clinton advisor, our good friend Richard Socarides. And we welcome back former Virginia Republican governor and former Republican National Committee Chairman Jim Gilmore. Jim Gilmore, let me begin with you. Is President Obama catching this Sandinista disease? Is his State of the Union going to be about inequality? Is it going to be about taxing the rich? Is it going to be about, transferring more federal benefits?
Well, I certainly hope not. We don't know what that speech is going to have in it, but it ought not to have that, because there's a danger here, Larry, as we've talked about in the past, of his destroying the profit motive, the incentives for people to be entrepreneurs and to create something exciting. And, I'm working on a project called AmericanOpportunity.org, and we think that the central point needs to be economic growth. Now, hoping that the president will put a program for real economic growth into his State of the Union when he says, look, the State of the Union isn't that great. We need to grow more. I've got a plan to do it. And if he'll do that, I think he's not a lame duck. I think he'd get a lot of cooperation out of the House of Representatives.
Well, Richard Socarides, by the time he gets into paragraph 3 of the domestic part of this speech, he's going to ask for a higher minimum wage, whatever it is now, $10 is new, $7.50 to $10. He's going to ask for extending unemployment benefits. This has nothing to do with the growth that Governor Gilmore is talking about. It has nothing to do with that kind of growth. And more, if he gets to taxes, which I know he will, he might even mention the corporate reform tax. But you know what? He wants it to be revenue positive, so the government can get its paws on more money to spend on various benefits and pet projects. Now, that's not growth. That's the de Blasio, that's the Elizabeth Warren disease, Richard Socarides.
Well, somewhere in there's a question, right?
Yes. Yes.
I certainly can guarantee Governor I can certainly guarantee Governor Gilmore that the president is not going to destroy the entrepreneurial system with his State of the Union address, and I do not think he is going to pursue policies on the left. I think he's going to continue to pursue moderate economic policies that are good for all Americans, as I believe he has been doing. I think it will include an effort to try to get Congress to raise the minimum wage. I think he will talk a lot about immigration, where I think there is a good opportunity still to compromise with the Republicans and get something done. And I think that he will say that if he can't get things done with Congress, that he will not be afraid to act in this second term independently by executive order.
Well, Governor Gilmore, again, I think the minimum wage, the unemployment extension, that stuff may get through, all right? My own view is I wish it wouldn't. There are better ways to do it. But if it does get through, it's going to be boiled down with Republicans putting some fiscal responsibility and some incentives into that. But, the other point, I want to come back to this, the reform of the corporate tax. I mean, we had a chap on last night who wants to abolish the corporate tax, a professor from Boston University who's done the work on this with the Brookings Institute, left of center institute. He abolished the corporate income tax, and it'll grow the economy, and most of all, it'll help workers and increase wages. Now, President Obama's not going to say anything like that. That would be a refreshing thing. He's not going to go there.
No, he's not going to go there, but he ought to go there.
Yeah.
Again, with the program we're doing at AmericanOpportunity.org, we think you could buy the corporate tax rate down considerably. And if you do that, you're going to explode growth. If he leaves this administration after the remaining part of his time, and we're still slogging along with no growth, he's not a successful president. And I think he's got to do something about that.
Richard, Richard, he may not be a lame duck at this point.
Right.
He may not be a lame duck. All right. That's from Bill Galston's column this morning in the Wall Street Journal. But I think he has very limited elbow room. Okay. His degrees of political freedom are going to be very, very limited. Ask you this question. I think you mentioned this a moment ago. The most interesting thing he might try to do is make a deal with Republicans on immigration reform. Now, Obama is not a deal maker. You worked for one, Clinton. Obama has very poor deal-making skills. But if he could put an immigration reform together that makes sense, okay, and is balanced and has economic growth in it, I think that would salvage the second term. All right? Where do you think they're going to go with this? They're going to try to jam it down the throats of the GOP? Or are they going to open up and say, help me on this, I want to reach across the aisle?
Well, I think you're exactly right. And I think that when they're now looking very hard for an opportunity to make something of the second term with the limited options that you mentioned, I mean, the options are limited for any number of reasons, in addition to the fact that it's the second term. But I think the smart thing to do would be to try to make a deal with Republicans in Congress on immigration reform, because I think many Republicans, many smart Republicans, understand that they need to do something to get beyond the immigration issue to enable success for their own party. And I think that if the president is smart, he will not try to, he will not overreach, and he will try to offer things that he thinks the Republicans can go for. And I think it would be a huge accomplishment for him and a huge accomplishment for the Republican Party and for the American people, which I think is what the president wants to do.
Jim Gilmore, look, Obama's going to have to defend Obamacare, which is going to be one hell of a thing. I don't know how he's going to do that. He's going to have to end the individual mandate, if you ask me. We talked about that in the first segment. I don't want to go over that ground again. But I think he has got to do that. He's reached the point. But let me go back. Final word to you. Regarding immigration reform, regarding the Republicans' chances to recapture the Senate in 2014, are you, as a card-carrying conservative, former Virginia governor, you ran the RNC, you know the ropes, do you think there's a deal to be made between the president and the Republican House on immigration?
Yeah, I think there probably is, but I think that you've got to answer some of the fundamental questions in immigration, which is, are we just going to declare open borders and anybody that can get here, it's going to be all is forgiven? I think that's the fundamental policy question that's got to be answered. But Larry, if I had to leave your viewers with one idea, it is that getting more people jobs and employed is a better way to improve their quality of life than something like the minimum wage.
Right.
The minimum wage is going to increase unemployment. Right. It's going to slow growth, get people jobs and get people employed. And if the president can do that, he can be a success.
What are the
Frankly,
chances?
if he doesn't, I don't think immigration is going to bail him out.
What are the chances the Republicans will wuss out on the minimum wage? They always wuss out on the minimum wage. If you really wanted to go that way, if you really wanted to put some assistance into wage earners, you'd be better off doing it transparently in the budget with a direct wage subsidy, because at least you wouldn't be pressuring the business. At least you wouldn't be taxing the individual business. I mean, but the Republicans always wuss out on that, Jim Gilmore. What's up with that?
Well, they don't make their case. I think that they really don't have a clear concept and a message to the American people that talks about the welfare of the American people that they want to produce. They get themselves wedged into this notion that we're just going to be against this reform or we're going to be against this minimum wage. You've got to offer the more positive vision, and I would urge my colleagues to do that. And the best way to do that is to talk about a dynamic, exciting economy where people can have careers, where young people can get jobs and get started, where people who are laid off suddenly can find another job because the economy is dynamic.
I'll tell you, last night we heard, I got to end on this, Larry Kudlow, professor at Boston University, abolished the corporate income tax altogether. All the loopholes, abolished the whole bloody thing. His work at the Tax Policy Center at the Brookings Institute, all right? It's not Heritage, it's not Cato, it's the Brookings Institute. They say if you abolish the corporate tax, the biggest winners would be workers and wage earners. How about that? Now, that would be something. Richard Socarides, I'm going to bug you on this the next time you come on.
That's some great research, Larry.
I'm telling you, this just guys are done it for real. Kudlow is not a Reagan, Kudlow, Laffer supply sider. He's just a competent economist, and he's come up with these numbers from the Tax Policy Center, which I think you would agree is basically objective, bipartisan, even a little left of center. That's where you get your wage growth. That's where you get your worker growth. Jim Gilmore is right. We need jobs. I got to get out of here. Richard Socarides, a Clinton alumnus. Jim Gilmore, former RNC chairman, governor of Virginia. Now, folks,